When I came across the open suitcase lying haphazardly on the bed, the air was filled with the heavy scent of Sarah's lavender perfume and betrayal. Secrets hung from the soft satin lining like pearls on a string, a thin red silk scarf I'd never seen Sarah wearing, a musky cologne that clearly wasn't mine, and a single silver cufflink engraved with the initials J. D. That didn't stand for my name. My wife of nearly 10 years was leaving me, and it was clear now that she had no intention of leaving the house alone. Sunlight streamed into the bedroom with a tinge of suspicion, filtering through the half-closed blinds and illuminating the lovingly prepared breakfast for two that lay unfinished and abandoned on the kitchen table. The coffee had grown bitter and cold, the toast stale and crisp. The clock ticked loudly, taunting me, showing me how much time had passed since Sarah had slipped out of the house without a word. She wasn't just late. Her absence now carried a deliberate air, a sinister melody of deceit and worry, humming just beneath the surface of the silence. I found her hastily scribbled note under our anniversary vase. The familiar slanted handwriting now seemed strange, almost alien, with a tremor that spoke of nerves and mystery. It read, "I'm going on a little trip out of town. I need some time to think and clear my head. Don't try to call me. There's nowhere for you to reach me right now, and we shouldn't talk about things getting back to normal." The note, like the open suitcase, spoke volumes about what it didn't say, as did the few words scribbled on the page. I felt sick with fear, more intense than in any business I'd ever done. I began calling Sarah's cell phone obsessively, and each unanswered call reflected my growing doubts and suspicions. Voicemail, call waiting, calling again and again, no answer. Each missed call overlapped with the previous one, feeding the doubts consuming my mind. The suitcase called out to me like a cursed Pandora's box, releasing heartache and betrayal with each new opening. I had to find out who JD was and what he had done to destroy my marriage and life as I knew it. At that moment, my partner Landon knocked loudly on the front door, bringing me out of my daze. "Ethan, are you home, dude? We have a briefing with the chief in 20 minutes. We need to hurry up." "Yeah. Sorry, I must have lost track of time." "Give me a minute," I replied. My voice sounded strange and strained, even to my own ears. Landon entered the house using the spare key I had given him years ago. His playful smile faded as soon as he saw the suitcase and note spread out on the bed. "Wow, what's going on here?" asked Landon with concern in his eyes. "What happened to Sarah?" I just shook my head, unable to find the words I knew I needed to say. Landon picked up the note and read it, frowning his eyebrows deeper with each line. "Oh God, Ethan, I'm sorry. This looks bad. We don't have to go there today. I can call the chief and explain." "No," I cut him short. "I need a distraction right now. Give me 5 minutes to splash some water on my face and get myself under control." Landon nodded, putting his hand on my shoulder. "Whatever you need, I'm here for you." But when I looked at myself in the mirror, red eyes staring back at me with a face 10 years older than yesterday, I wasn't sure even my closest friend could help me right now. The days following Sarah's disappearance passed in a haze of sleepless nights and early morning awakenings as I woke up after an hour of restless sleep. As an experienced police detective, I carefully pieced together the fragments of my shattered life and marriage with the same care and attention to detail that I would take on any high-profile case at the precinct. I combed through phone records, bank statements, credit card bills, even old emails looking for any digital breadcrumbs Sarah might have left behind. These electronic traces painted an increasingly chilling picture that led me deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole of her double life and web of lies. Mysterious bookings for late nights at expensive hotels around town, paid for in cash so as not to arouse suspicion when using a shared credit card. Flirtatious text messages with an unknown number, deleted from her phone but not erased from our cell phone carrier's digital archives. Generous purchases of clothing, lingerie, and jewelry that appeared sporadically over the past year, with no record of these items in our home or her closet. Sarah was living a second life that I knew nothing about, squirreling away savings for emergencies that I had created for us. I loved her unconditionally, without reservation, while she slowly drifted away from our marriage. The other man, J.D., as the engraving on his cufflink said, remained a ghost, a shadowy figure hovering in the periphery of my mind that I could not yet identify. But his presence haunted me everywhere. The unfamiliar cologne on the shirts in Sarah's laundry room, the single brown hair on the passenger seat of her car, the receipt for a men's shirt from an expensive retail chain, neatly pasted into her day planner, JD, was very real, an embodied representation of the extent of Sarah's lies and deceit, even if I didn't yet have a face or name to attach to him. On a somber, rain-soaked Tuesday afternoon, as I was going through the contents of Sarah's desk drawers, looking for evidence she might have left behind, there was a major break in the case. In the bottom drawer lay a crumpled receipt for a spa massage she'd booked 2 weeks earlier. The name of a luxury, 5-star hotel and high-end spa popped off the receipt, and its upscale downtown address lingered in my memory. I had passed by this extravagant high-rise building countless times on my way to press conferences and public appearances for the department, never imagining that one day I would retrace my wife's steps through its gilded lobby. I hesitated at the polished brass front doors, watching through the glass as uniformed messengers and wealthy men in designer suits whizzed past. My faded blue jeans and worn leather jacket were already making me feel out of place amongst all this splendor, but I had to know if anyone in the house had seen Sarah lately. Taking a deep breath, I gathered all my nerve and swung the heavy door open. The noise of the city streets instantly died down as I stepped onto the plush carpet. I tentatively made my way through the marble lobby, ignoring the curious glances the hotel staff cast at me. When I approached the elite spa front desk, a pretty blonde woman in a black uniform smiled politely and asked how she could help. "Hello, I'm looking for my wife. I believe she made an appointment here about 2 weeks ago. Her name is Sarah Walker." The receptionist's eyes lit up with recognition as she scanned the ledger open next to her computer. "Yes, Mr. Walker. Your wife is booked here for a massage last Saturday at 5:00 p.m. In fact," she paused, cherry red fingernails scrawled across the list in the book. "It seems she made another appointment for another session with Mr. John Davis yesterday. They're just finishing up work." Hearing his name felt like a bolt of lightning, and it became hard to breathe. John Davis. My partner and longtime friend on the force, recently promoted to detective for his heroic service. We'd become friends years ago when we worked as cops on patrol, went to the police academy together, supported each other through our first heartbreaks and family deaths. I had even been best man at his wedding 6 years ago. And now here he was, at this very moment, with my wife. A wave of incandescent anger and pain washed over me, causing me to stagger and grab the polished marble counter to keep myself on my feet. The secretary shifted awkwardly, avoiding my gaze. Oh dear. I probably shouldn't have mentioned the details of the recording. I apologize. "Let me call the spa manager. I'm sure we can work things out." I shook my head, already getting ready to leave. The damage had been done. A bitter taste filled my mouth like ashes from a raging fire. My wife and my best friend having things happen right under my nose. Landon was waiting for me in our apartment, sipping a beer and watching a basketball game on the couch we'd picked out together years ago. When I crossed the threshold, he quickly turned off the TV and stood up, studying my face. "Any leads today?" he asked uncertainly. "You look like you just saw a ghost." I burst into a harsh, humorless laugh. "Yeah, you could say that. Pour me one too, will you?" He handed me an open bottle from the fridge, raising his eyebrows. I took a long sip to even out my voice before the words trickled out. "It's John Davis. He's the one Sarah's been sneaking around with for God knows how long." The words spoken aloud somehow became even more real, triggering another wave of nausea. John. I mean Detective Davis, our John? Landon's mouth opened in bewilderment. One and the same. That smug prick just couldn't keep it in his pants, I spat. Found them both in the spa at the Elysium Hotel. The receptionist said they were finishing up a massage. Massage. I bellowed the last words, throwing the still full bottle across the apartment with force. It exploded, showering the brick wall with foam and broken glass. Landon didn't even flinch, just stared at me with a mixture of deep sadness and pity as I raged. When my outburst finally subsided, he crossed the room and gently placed a hand on my shoulder. Come on, brother, sit down before you fall over. Let's talk. He lowered me to the couch and handed me a kitchen towel to wipe away the angry tears that were now streaming down my face. The hot anger had already morphed into something darker, a cold, numbing sense of betrayal that gripped my heart like a vice. Landon sat beside me and told the whole, sordid story piece by piece. The suitcase, the note, the spa. Sarah's mask had finally fallen off, exposing the affair she'd been hiding for an unknown amount of time. Sleeping with John had been her escape, a way to break free from the monotony of her routine life with me. It was only supposed to be a one-night stand, a drunken mistake born of boredom that she justified in a moment of weakness, but now their secret shone in the harsh light of exposure. One impulsive act had ruined so much. I listened numbly as Landon spoke, his voice sounding muffled, as if he were underwater. My heart felt as if it had been ripped open, exposed, filled with a poisonous mixture of love and hate, anger and regret. I'd seen our entire relationship with Sarah turn to ash after her betrayal. The hopeful couple whose shared dreams had once brought us together were now torn apart by deception. She'd thrown it all away, and I didn't know how I'd ever be able to look at her the same way again. In the agonizing days that followed Sarah's betrayal, I withdrew into myself, grieving the loss of the life and love I had known. The world around me moved in a daze, blurring joylessly. I took an extended leave of absence, unable to bear seeing John at work every day anymore, pretending everything was fine. My superiors assumed it was due to stress and expressed their bureaucratic sympathy, oblivious to the real reason for my absence. I gained some sense of purpose and control by spending endless empty hours reviewing old files and reports. The familiar rituals and procedures of investigation soothed me, chasing away the shadows and unwanted memories of my failed relationships. One late, sleepless night, energized by whiskey and self-pity, I found myself reviewing a burglary case from almost a year ago. It had puzzled me at the time, but had been closed for lack of evidence and witnesses. But now a previously unnoticed detail caught my attention and sent a chill down my spine. John Davis was listed in the police report as a material witness because he had been the first to respond to the silent alarm that had gone off at the scene. He conducted initial interviews with the homeowners and provided a detailed report of the incident. At the time, I was proud of John's diligent efforts to solve a complex case. But now his involvement in the case was staring sharply off the pages, raising suspicion. John's statements reeked of deception too polished, too airtight, without any of the gaps or inconsistencies one would expect from civilian witnesses unfamiliar with police procedures. He described in detail the missing items and the exact sequence of events, as if guiding the investigation toward a pre-known finale. I realized with horror that John had manipulated the investigation from within, steering detectives away from specific leads or evidence that would incriminate him. He had used my trust and our friendship to throw me off the trail. Armed with my growing suspicions and a burning desire to understand the depth of John's betrayal, I began to relentlessly research his past affairs and financial records. Gradually, I unearthed a complex web of falsified police reports, offshore bank accounts, and questionable business transactions under the guise of loosely affiliated LCs. John had built an elaborate house of cards to disguise his corruption, using his credibility and my faith in him to hide it right under my nose. Anger boiled up inside me as everything fell into place. He had played me for a fool, making me an accessory to his criminal enterprise without my knowledge. But John's misdeeds went beyond the professional realm. When I traced the inflated payments of his shell corporations, I found expenses for exotic travel, a luxury sports car leased under an alias, and a $1 million life insurance policy issued suspiciously close to the date of our wedding. Sarah's name was listed as the sole beneficiary. The ugly truth was revealed to me. John had seduced Sarah and made her an unwitting accomplice in his machinations. Their affair gave him intimate access and influence to manipulate her like a pawn. She wasn't just bored or distracted. She was caught in the net of a cunning predator who exploited her vulnerabilities for his own selfish purposes. Consumed by a thirst for justice, I hastily gathered my evidence against John into a manila folder. I didn't allow myself to think about the consequences before grabbing my keys and leaving the house to meet him at the train station. We nearly bumped into each other when John came out of the locker room, still flushed and sweaty from his daily workout. His cocky grin faded when he noticed the wild look in my eyes. "Ethan, you're back. I thought you were on vacation." I interrupted him by shoving the heavy folder forcefully into his chest. "It's over, John." "I know everything." John froze, the color gone from his face. When he finally met my sizzling gaze, all hint of pretense was gone. In his place stood a completely naked man, bitter, desperate, and frightened. Without a word, he took the folder from my trembling hands and flipped through the carefully assembled contents. Printouts of bank statements and certificates of ownership. Falsified police reports with his forged signatures. Photographs of him and Sarah in an intimate embrace, unaware that their affair was being documented by a private investigator. With a long sigh, John sank down onto the bench and dropped his head in his arms, the folder sliding to the floor. For a long time, the empty locker room was filled only with the echo of the shower spray dripping from the shower. When John finally looked up at me, tears glistened in his eyes. "She shouldn't have gotten involved, Ethan. It was just about the money." His voice was hoarse, pleading. "Sarah was just an unexpected bonus, a distraction. I never meant to." He fell silent, shrinking under the force of my sarcastic glare. "You used her." I progressed, my shout reverberating sharply off the tiles. "You manipulated her feelings, put her at risk, forced her to compromise her values. And in doing so, you nearly destroyed me. Was the money worth it, John?" I stood over him, clenching my fists and shaking with rage. The man I had once considered family was cowering beneath me, pathetic and small. The depth of his betrayal was deeper than I could have imagined. He never cared for my wife or me. We were just a means to an end, pawns he used in his unquenchable thirst for power and greed. Disgusted, I turned sharply on my heels and strode toward the exit. Stopping on the threshold, I looked over my shoulder. "I'm taking this evidence to internal affairs tomorrow morning. You need to save them the trouble and turn in your badge tonight." Without waiting for his response, I walked out, leaving the door behind me. Facing the wreckage of my plans, I realized that John's fragile house of cards was about to collapse. The thought gave me no pleasure, only deep exhaustion and a sense of mournful loss of the man I thought he was. My relentless pursuit of justice was fueled by love for Sarah, for the badge fraternity, and for the hopeful newlywed who once believed that a happy life was a reality. I could only move forward, hoping that forgiveness might yet flare in the smoldering embers of betrayal. The trial was long and grueling. Sarah was by my side throughout the long process, and we both endured the endless delays and the excruciatingly monotonous routine of the court system. Every day we sat together in the front row, presenting a united front in the face of the quiet gossip and leering glances of the court staff and various attorneys passing by. Rumors of John's dramatic fall, and my role in initiating an internal investigation against him spread through the precinct like wildfire. Opinions were divided, some extolling me as a righteous crusader fighting corruption within our own ranks, others decrying my betrayal of a fellow officer. But most of the raucous gossip centered around Sarah, the Scarlet Woman at the epicenter of the scandal. If only they knew how cunningly John had seduced and manipulated her. The indictment against John was irrefutable. Dozens of counts of tampering with evidence, forging legal documents, and fraud that would likely lead to decades behind bars. But despite the certainty of a guilty verdict, John assembled an elite team of slick defense attorneys to try to sow reasonable doubt in the jury. They focused on Sarah's affair with John, portraying her as a rejection-bitter lover who fabricated evidence against him to avenge the termination of their tryst. During direct questioning, Sarah answered their questions with grace, neither downplaying her mistakes nor absolving herself of guilt. She readily admitted that she had violated the sanctity of our marriage vows and expressed, I believe, sincere remorse for the pain she had caused me. In doing so, she did not allow the defense to misrepresent the case and blame all of John's misconduct solely on her testimony. She brought their accusations back to the facts of the case again and again, keeping the jury's attention focused on John's compelling story of professional corruption and financial fraud. I watched Sarah with admiration as she testified and was moved by this new display of courage and fortitude. My wife possessed a quiet but formidable inner strength that I feared had been lost in the preceding months of explosive revelations and crushing heartbreak. While I nursed my whiskey wounds, wallowing in self-pity, Sarah underwent a metamorphosis in the wake of tragedy. She emerged from the chrysalis of our disintegrating marriage, reborn fearless, unwavering, and determined to atone for past mistakes. Her growth inspired me to take a fearless inventory of my own shortcomings and missteps throughout the painful ordeal. So when the defense called me as the last witness, I stepped to the stand ready and unwavering under the stairs. The lead defense attorney headed toward me, his Italian leather shoes clicking menacingly on the polished courtroom floor. "Detective Walker, please describe to the jury the nature of your relationship with the defendant prior to the accusations made by your wife." I straightened up, looking John straight in the eye where he sat a few yards away from me at the defendant's desk. "For nearly 15 years, I have considered your client one of my closest friends and most trusted colleagues on the police force. We were brothers in arms who had each other's backs on the streets. My family embraced John like family. He was a constant guest at every holiday dinner, birthday party, and Sunday night soccer game. I trusted him completely, both personally and professionally, at least until the depth of his betrayal was revealed." A murmur swept through the ranks of defense attorneys and reporters. The defense attorney cleared his throat, leafing through his notes. "So you claim that prior to the affair between your wife Sarah and my client, Mr. Davis, you had no knowledge or suspicion of any illegal or unethical actions on his part?" "Not at all," I confirmed. "I considered John a man of character and integrity, one of the most honest and dedicated public servants in the police force. I had no reason to doubt that, and he took advantage of that trust to cover up his crimes." "I see. And when your wife first confessed to the affair, you immediately believed her version of events accusing my client?" "Objection, speculation," the prosecutor interjected. "There is no factual basis to suggest an immediate confession on the part of Mrs. Walker." "Sustained." "Rephrase the question, counselor." The attorney pulled himself up by the collar, changing tactics. "Did you harbor any animosity toward my client for his association with your wife?" I leaned forward, keeping my gaze fixed on him. "Of course. I was devastated and angry when the affair came to light, but my personal feelings had no bearing on the facts that came to light during the trial. The evidence spoke for itself. John had repeatedly violated the law and the ethical standards of his service. He betrayed my trust, the department, and the citizens he swore to protect and serve. My role was merely to bring these misdeeds to the attention of internal affairs." The defense attorney looked agitated, flipping through his notes looking for a new line of attack. But I foiled every gambit, invariably returning to the black and white facts of John's corruption. With a frustrated hum, he declined further questions. I left the witness stand and returned to my seat next to Sarah, feeling completely vindicated. 2 weeks later, we received news of the jury's unanimous verdict on all counts. John Davis would likely spend the rest of his life behind bars. While Sarah and I hugged each other with tears of relief, I felt only deep sadness and disappointment in my former friend. John was endowed with all the blessings of life intelligence, charm, authority, trust. He enjoyed the unconditional love and support of family and friends. Yet he chose to squander it all in the pursuit of wealth and vain excesses. The tragedy was the lost potential, the bright future he had stolen from himself by trading honesty for greed and lust. For months after the verdict, Sarah and I slowly sifted through the smoldering ashes of our relationship, searching for traces of a strong bond untouched by the flames of betrayal. The process was painful, but necessary. We applied salve to old wounds so they could heal properly. We went to counseling, read books about relationships, went on weekend trips to distraction-free places to discuss our feelings frankly. And gradually, through tremendous personal growth and forgiveness on both sides, we began to lay the foundation for a new secure future together. On the 1-year anniversary of that fateful day, when I discovered Sarah's goodbye note, we sat together on the back porch of our new home and watched the sunset color the evening sky in vibrant shades of orange and fuchsia. As darkness slowly enveloped the landscape, I walked over and gently took Sarah's hand. She turned toward me, eyes gleaming in the fading light, calmer than I'd seen them since the earliest days of our courtship. "What are you thinking about?" I asked softly, running my thumb over her knuckles. "About how I'm very blessed to be here with you after everything we've been through." She squeezed my hand lightly. "Thank you for fighting for us, Ethan." I lifted her hand and gently pressed my lips to the inside of her wrist. "We fought for this together, Sarah, and we created something beautiful from the ashes."